Hello everyone. Are you being manipulated? Have you ever been manipulated? Stay until the end of the video. You might be surprised by what you discover about yourself. Today's video is about a very delicate and controversial topic, the manipulation of faith. We will explore how religious leaders use faith to manipulate and control, often turning religion into cults for their own benefit and gain. In a world filled with beliefs and values, faith stands as a fundamental pillar for many people's lives. However, this faith is not always guided by benevolent hands. In the darkness of manipulation, unscrupulous religious leaders weave their webs of suffering, exploiting the devotion of believers for personal gain and maintaining power. Some famous examples include: in 1978, Jim Jones led a religious cult known as the People's Temple to a mass suicide in the jungle of Guyana, resulting in the deaths of over 900 people. Jones, a charismatic and manipulative leader, convinced his followers that he was a messiah and that the world was on the brink of apocalypse. Through mind control techniques, social isolation, and threats of violence, he created an environment of fear and absolute submission, culminating in the tragic event of Jonestown. David Koresh, leader of the Branch Davidian sect, was involved in a 51-day standoff with the FBI in 1993, which ended in a deadly fire that resulted in the deaths of 76 people, including Koresh and his followers. Koresh preached an apocalyptic interpretation of the Bible and proclaimed himself a prophet. He manipulated his followers through information control, sexual abuse, and coercion, demanding absolute obedience and fueling fear of the end of the world. We can also talk about Warren Jeffs, the leader of the FLDS, Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, sect, who was convicted of child sexual assault and is currently imprisoned. Jeffs preached a doctrine of polygamy and total submission to his orders. He manipulated his followers through social isolation, information control, and coercion, creating an environment of fear and abuse where women were subjected to forced marriages and sexual violence. Another example is Scientology, founded by L. Ron Hubbard, a controversial organization accused of abusive and manipulative practices. Hubbard, a science fiction writer, created a complex doctrine based on aliens and thetans, the immortal soul, and charges high fees for members to access its teachings and therapy. The organization has been criticized for its aggressive recruitment methods, mind control practices, and extortion tactics. One of the weapons used for manipulation by religion is the prosperity gospel. The prosperity gospel, also known as the theology of prosperity, is a set of religious beliefs that claim faith in God can bring material wealth and financial success to its followers. This theological trend, which originated in the United States in the 20th century, has gained great popularity in recent decades, especially in Latin American and African countries. Proponents of the prosperity gospel base their teachings on particular interpretations of the Bible, mainly from the Old Testament, often using verses out of context or with controversial readings. Some central principles of the prosperity gospel include: the donation of money to churches and religious leaders is seen as an investment with multiplied financial returns. This practice is based on the belief that generosity to God generates material prosperity, as if the donation were a trigger for financial abundance. Material wealth and prosperity are interpreted as divine rights of the faithful, guaranteed by God as a reward for their faith and adherence to the principles of the prosperity gospel. This belief is based on the reading of certain biblical verses out of context, suggesting that faith guarantees wealth as a divine reward. I often joke that they've turned God into Santa Claus. If you behave, God will bring you money. This is how the faith of the faithful is exploited by religious leaders who take advantage of devotion for personal enrichment. False promises of financial success, often unrealistic and unattainable, generate frustration and guilt in the faithful, feeding a cycle of emotional and financial dependence on the leaders. Another form of manipulation is that religious leaders position themselves as supreme authorities, demanding blind obedience and absolute submission from the faithful. Any questioning or dissent is severely punished, whether through threats of divine punishment, excommunication, social ostracism, or even physical violence. This authoritarian stance creates an environment of fear and repression, where freedom of thought and individual expression are stifled. The faithful are indoctrinated to accept the beliefs and teachings of the leader without question, becoming mere instruments for maintaining the leader's power and influence. It is important to be very careful because a manipulative leader can use cunning concepts and strategies to subtly become the sole savior. Pay attention if your leader is restricting your access to external information, limiting contact with other perspectives and sources of knowledge. This creates emotional and intellectual dependence on the leader, who becomes the only source of truth and wisdom. Demanding veneration and reverence from the faithful. Their teachings are considered indisputable, and any questioning is seen as a sign of lack of faith. Creating a rigid hierarchy with the leader at the top and the faithful at the base. This structure reinforces the power asymmetry and the absolute dependence on the leader. Positioning themselves as the only savior, offering easy solutions to complex problems, and demanding absolute loyalty in exchange for help and support. If they do this, they are turning your religion into a cult. But what is a cult? According to sociologists and psychologists, cults are groups that use coercive methods to control their members. Let's explore some common characteristics of cults. Cults control all the information that reaches their members, including what they read, see, and hear. There is a constant pursuit of spiritual purity, leading to the exclusion of any person or idea that does not align with the group's principles. Public confessions of sins or failures are common, creating an environment of control and surveillance. The group's well-being is always placed above individual well-being, leading to a loss of personal identity. Cults use emotional manipulation tactics to keep members loyal and obedient. The group's principles are considered sacred and unquestionable, preventing any form of questioning or criticism. Cults often attract people through promises of power, salvation, and a sense of belonging. Charismatic leaders are essential in this process, as they are seen as figures of authority and inspiration. Cults emotionally manipulate their followers using techniques such as initial love bombing, behavior and thought control, and specific rituals that reinforce loyalty to the group. New members are welcomed with great attention, care, and affection, creating a strong emotional bond with the group and the leader. This initial display of love and acceptance makes them more receptive to the cult's messages and doctrines. The individual freedom of members is gradually restricted. Leaders dictate how the faithful should think, act, dress, and behave, limiting their autonomy and reinforcing dependence on the group. External information is controlled or prohibited, and critical thinking is discouraged. Cults use repetitive rituals and practices to strengthen group cohesion, reinforce identity, and loyalty to the leader. These rituals can include prayers, chants, fasts, meditations, and other activities that induce a state of trance or submission. Fear is a powerful tool of control. The cult punishes any disobedience or questioning through physical punishment, public humiliation, excommunication, or even threats of divine punishment. This climate of fear suppresses dissent and ensures total submission of the faithful. Moments of fragility and suffering of members are exploited to create emotional dependency. The leader positions themselves as the sole savior, offering easy solutions to complex problems and demanding absolute loyalty in exchange for help and support. In today's video, we explored the topic of religious manipulation, a complex and often controversial subject. We discussed the strategies used by some unscrupulous religious leaders to control and abuse their followers, from the initial love bombing to behavior control and punishment through fear. We also looked at historical examples of leaders like Jim Jones, David Koresh, and Warren Jeffs, who committed atrocities in the name of faith. It's important to remember that these cases do not represent the majority of religions or religious leaders, but serve as a warning of the dangers of manipulation and blind submission. Remember, before getting involved with any religion, thoroughly research its beliefs and practices. Be aware of leaders who demand absolute obedience and suppress questioning. Use your critical thinking to analyze the information you receive and seek different perspectives. Follow your instincts and don't be afraid to say no if something feels wrong. If you suspect abuse or manipulation in a religious context, report it to the appropriate authorities. Authentic faith should be a source of peace, love, and inspiration, not fear, control, and manipulation. By being aware of the dangers of religious manipulation and cultivating critical thinking, we can protect our individual freedom and seek authentic and liberating faith. If you would like, share your experience about you or any familiar you think is being abused. Maybe your experience can help others. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.